Hi, this is Liv Morgan, and you are listening to No One Knows, a deep dive podcast into the mysterious death of Joann Matouk Romain. Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm here with Kelly and Michelle, and we have a special guest. What's your name?
Michael.
He does exist, people. He's here.
And we have gone through how many messages, guys? Lots of messages, lots of comments, lots of texts, lots of calls. We have accumulated lots of questions, and we thought we would get together and answer them so that everybody can hear it from all of us.
All right, what you got?
Okay, do you guys want me to read them? Is that how we're going to do it? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question we were asked was, what was Joann's childhood like, and what were her parents like, and how did the relationship with her siblings kind of get to this point? I don't know if you want to answer that one, Michelle.
Yeah, so believe it or not, the Matouks were actually a normal family up until my grandparents passed away. Super tight-knit family. All the siblings, all the grandkids would go over to our grandparents' house basically every day, and then every Sunday we would have like a family dinner with all 50 of us together. Yeah, it was just super normal. And the chaos and the separation started when my grandparents passed. So I would say my jiddo, which we call grandpa, or consider grandpa, he passed away in 1988, and then our tete, which we call for grandma, this is in Arabic, she passed in 1994. So 1994 is when the separation of the siblings started, and it was over money. There was a large inheritance of 20 million plus that was supposed to be divided 5 ways. The two oldest, Bill and Rosemary, couldn't read and only divided by 2, stole all the money. There was a lawsuit. They could have been prosecuted and went to jail. My mom was too nice and said they had families. She didn't want to prosecute her own siblings. So they didn't end up going to jail, but because she said, I can't put my own family in jail. But in hindsight, if she would have known this was going to happen to her, I'm sure she would have chose a different route.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, it was a totally normal family up until 1994.
And I think it's important to add that we've kind of mentioned that we're going to go back to the start of Joann's life, and we'll go into detail about all of that. There'll be an episode that kind of highlights all of that information, because there's a lot of important facts when it comes to the lawsuit and how the lawsuit worked, and actually how it come to be that the people that were representing Bill and Rosemary, who were the executors of the trust and the will and everything, were actually let go from their own attorneys due to the falsifying of documents and allegations and everything. So
yeah, the attorneys, they acquitted them and said we cannot represent you anymore. You've forged signatures, you've lied to us, you've stolen money that we did not know about. And that was, this is for another whole episode, because we could talk about this for a long time, but that's pretty much the basis of it.
The next one, I think that I can answer that. So it says, you mentioned DNA evidence. Can you elaborate on that? And if you guys have anything to add, you guys can talk. So the DNA, I think, is extremely important in this case. Due to the fact that there wasn't a body until 70 days after, and where the body was found, Being in water obviously cleared away any DNA that there would have been on her or under fingernails or anything like that. But I find it odd that the DNA that was tested was destroyed in the process of testing. And then some of the DNA that was found or given to police after the fact were donated. So for instance, the scarf that was found right near the water's edge was never tested for DNA. And then we've spoke about it in earlier episodes at the beginning, but when it comes to fingerprint DNA, there's a certain type of way that you have to do it when it's on leather. And being that the Lexus, the interior of it was leather, they should not have dusted for fingerprints, and they did. There's a process called super glue fuming that you have to do to get the full latent print DNA. But part of that too is they never DNA tested the purse. The purse was given back to you guys. It was never even really considered evidence at all, despite you guys telling them that there was
We told them multiple times.
Yeah, that the strap was broken and it was a new purse. But the other part of it too is, which this really caught me when I first started reading everything, is the DNA that was in the vehicle. They had called or talked to you guys and had said, oh, the only fingerprints that are in here are, Michelle, Joann, Callie, Michael's DNA. There's nobody else's. And you guys had spoke to, I don't know if it was your private investigator, and they had said, wait, do any of you guys have government jobs?
Right. So we figured at first, it's like, are they going off? Do they take our fingerprints at birth and they have that information?
Yeah.
We didn't know what to refer to.
Yeah, which makes total sense. I mean, you guys were a lot younger. We're talking 14 years later. The questions you would ask now are probably not the same questions you would ask then.
Well, we also thought that was very bizarre then, because we knew that there was more people in the car at that point too.
Yeah.
2 days before we were out with our friends, car full of people.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been washed, before. Mm-hmm. So we knew for them to come back with it was just us, which they would never have had our fingerprints to begin with. Yeah. That was just very bizarre. So there would have been a million fingerprints.
We had valet drivers and many people that were in the cars.
Yeah. And your mom was watching a child at the time too.
And there was a child in the car, so that kids touch everything. So the baby's fingerprints would have been on everything.
Yeah. It
so
just is odd.
that sat very.
And that was one of the first initial things that they told you guys.
Yeah, and so that was a red flag immediately.
Yeah. And I think too, when it comes to like the bloody napkins that were found just a few days after, that to me is like a telltale sign. Like, oh yeah, they for sure.
They're trying to get rid of anything that had.
Yes, because like, why would you ever, in a million years, throw away anything? Like, if you don't, and this is when it comes to DNA testing, like, we have a lot of advancements now in technology, but like that's why there's cases from the 60s and 70s that are being solved now, cold cases, because they've kept evidence for so many years and waited for advancements in testing. So it's not like there was a lack of technology. There was just a lack of good police work. Correct. Purposely, I think. So, let's go to the next one. You guys good with that? Okay. So it says, what do you think motivated the Grosse Pointe Woods and Farms police to cover this up? Do you think it was money, threats? What do you think it was? Do you want to answer that one, Kelly?
Sure. Well, the motivation was that they were all working together. They all know Tim very well. They all know Billy really well. Very small towns here, so it's not like we're coming from big cities that are where they wouldn't know each other. They all are in cahoots with each other. So whether it was or is that they're all getting paid off by the same people or all in the same ring of stuff, or maybe just merely because they know each other. But that was it. Is from our standpoint, it's because they knew him, Bill and Tim, so well that they were just doing whatever they had to help them. Yeah,
and I think a lot of it too says the fact that when you're listening to the depositions, you can hear them talking about how they know them. Yeah. And, for instance, Bill, who owns the wine store, gives discounts, gives away free alcohol to the law enforcement officers who were in charge of this case. Yeah. And when you watch the trickle-down factor, you're like, okay, if that's what happens, obviously they have some sort of relationship more than just law enforcement coming in and out.
Just being law enforcement. So,
yeah. And then Tim also working with the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. He had worked with other police departments. It's a very close knit.
It's all intertwined.
Yes.
And it always has been. And then as we went digging, we found out how much more it actually is intertwined with itself. So it makes sense now.
And most people, like you guys came forward right away and you gave them a list of everybody that should have been questioned. And instead of them questioning these individuals, they would meet with them and be like, hey, this is what's going on with your sister's case or your cousin's case. And it's like, but wait, these people were on a list
to be questioned.
And they never were. They were given information about her case.
It was, that was it. They were never even asked if they would come in for questioning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so the next one, somebody asked in our last reel, why did we have the Ford house at the end of our reel with the billboard?
So the Ford house is where they were holding a honorary event for the chief of police, and that's why we were over that way, because we wanted to make sure that the chief was honored, in the proper way. Letting everybody know about the cover-up of this murder that's been going on for 14 years.
And so the party was at the Ford house, and we were informed about this party
by Tim Matouk.
By Tim Matouk himself.
And he invited us.
And he invited us. He sent a message in a group chat letting us know the day and time of the event with the invitation attached. So what else were we supposed to do?
We weren't paying $300 a ticket to line their pockets any more than they're already lined. So we took the money and we got a billboard.
Saluted the chief.
Right? I think that's fair. And it just happened to be at the Ford house. The Ford house doesn't have any association with...
the Ford house, the Ford family has nothing to do.
It's just that's where the event was held.
That night. So that...
And we've heard from some of the workers inside of the Ford house that evening that it was talked about. The planes that were flying very low in the cove and the billboard and...
Which was the intent.
So definitely ruffled the feathers.
It was a successful idea.
Yeah. We got one good weekend of billboarding in.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to
we'll get to that next.
Somebody asked me, which I think is hilarious, why do you call the store Wood, Wine, and Liquor? That's not its name. I don't fucking know. It's a liquor, wine, beer. They sell it all. On the side of the building, there's like... What does it say? It says like spirits and wine. I don't know. The actual name is like Woods Wholesale Wine. But they have like another name too. Like they do business as another name. So
they do, and I guess because we were looking this up, if you pull up the liquor store, I don't know what documentation, it comes back as Woods Fine Wine and Spirits, which is what it was called before Billy changed it to Woods Wholesale Wine.
Yes.
And I don't remember which year that was, but he clearly didn't change all of his documents because it still pulls as the other name.
When I'm talking about a wine store, the wine store I'm talking about in question is the one on Mack Avenue that is owned by Billy Matouk.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you didn't have to specify
well, you know what? Just so everybody...
The name of the liquor store is Woods Wholesale Wine.
Wholesale. Because they're bigger than Costco. Don't forget. Bigger than Costco.
They have a sign that says so.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one says, will you eventually be releasing the footage of the van hitting the billboard multiple times? And this was a question we were being asked as we were kind of putting things out. At this point, everything has been released. You
guys have seen everything that we have.
Yeah, every piece of documentation that we received from the bystander is out. And that's what we talked about on the last episode. Episode 11 was...
everything about that day.
Everything.
Well, I think also it's important to let everybody know he was going at a very fast pace, about 50 miles an hour when he hit the billboard truck. And it happened so quickly that the witness pulled out her phone. The witness pulled out her phone as fast as she could and started taking pictures.
Yes.
So, yeah. I mean, she wished she would have done video, but it was just so quick.
It was so fast.
That she did what she could do in that time. The moment.
Yeah.
But as you can see in the pictures, there's smoke coming off of the tires.
Yes.
So you'd have to have your foot completely pressed down on the pedal to generate
that much smoke.
And the tire came off. We can't forget that.
Yeah, and the tire came off.
There was smoke coming from both vans, so I mean, take that into consideration for the speed wise of how fast he was coming at him. So.
And then he was able to drive around the block without a tire, which is pretty impressive.
and pull it right back behind
Yeah.
the wine
It's
store.
like he's done it before.
Right. It was like a seasoned hit or something.
It's a seasoned hit.
Oh my god. So we have released everything. Everything that you guys have heard in episode 11 is everything we have. We have no further updates right now. We have not heard back from Maria Miller at the prosecutor's office. I have not heard back from Detective Adams. My FOIA request was denied, stating it was an ongoing investigation.
There's a shocker.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question says, how many cops come to the wine store? Something isn't right about it. So I guess it's more of like a comment.
Right.
And I would agree. We kind of touched on that a minute ago. There are a lot of officers.
I mean, obviously we don't have a specific head count because we would never actually know how many go in there, but...
I guess if we went back and looked at all of the depositions, which there are a lot.
There's a lot.
But
I
if
mean,
we were be able to make some sort of web and kind of connect.
From what we could see just off of depths that we have, and I mean, there's at least 10 to 12 of them that we know of that go in there.
That under oath, they were honest.
Yeah.
I don't know to the extent that they were honest
Yeah.
under oath because...
But I don't really take that as odd. It's a small community. The store's been there 60, how many years, Cal?
65 years.
65 years. I mean, it's... our grandfather was always generous to law enforcement, always gave them discounts. I mean...
And...
So it's something that was started.
I feel like that's something that happens in a lot of small communities.
True.
Yeah, but, Bill...
Which is fine as long as you're not doing
corrupt.
favors like covering up murders
Yeah.
for the
Right.
alcohol. Right?
So that's
I mean,
where they've upped the ante.
so there's that.
Well, not only that, but I think too, there's been a lot of people that have reached out through social media and have told us like, hey, I've always shopped at the Woods wine store. And like, since listening to the podcast, since hearing everything about Joann, like I've stopped shopping there because I feel uneasy about supporting a business that like clearly something is not right. Even hypothetically, let's, for instance, say Bill Matouk did nothing. He still was not investigated when he should have been.
Right.
And that's the first issue, is everybody should have been investigated from the start.
And now that his behavior this whole time has been so off that, again, even it's a hypothetical he didn't do anything, he's acting very guilty.
And the part of me that really blew my mind was when I'm listening to the depositions, and I did post a few of those, where he's saying, like, the lawyer's asking him, like, what did you do to help find your sister? And that, to me, like, sits really bad in my gut. Like, you can have your differences when it comes to, like, money, but, like, at the end of the day, if your sister's missing, and that wine store was given to you by your parents, the same very parents that are Joann's parents, and, like, you don't hang up a missing poster, you don't go out and search for her. That night that she was missing, all of your family was out. His kids were out.
They went to get him, and he was sleeping, and they woke him up to tell him that she's missing, and he said, what do you want me to do, and went back to sleep. And his kids at that point left him there and were looking for her as well.
Yeah.
And then to, add insult to injury, when we had our funeral, they didn't close the liquor store the day of the funeral either.
Yeah, that to me is just...
Like, that was very bizarre for us. They were at the funeral, but, I mean, you're not Costco. You can close your business.
For one day.
You're not
you're honoring your
every other business, so the business that she worked at closed.
The businesses that you...
The boutique that she worked at closed. And the family liquor store stayed open. It's so
her funeral was on a Saturday.
And
the clothing store, yeah, it's disgusting. The clothing store she worked at closed on a Saturday.
I didn't know that.
Because she's, at a funeral. They had a funeral for her.
So another what the fuck moment where I learned something
there you
new
go.
every day.
There's your what the fuck for the day.
For the day, right? Okay, so the next question says... has anybody ever tried to request footage from the wine store? Do they have cameras? It seems so shady. So when it comes to requesting footage, we would need law enforcement's help to do so. Considering the rapport that we have with law enforcement, I don't really think that's an option. I mean, it's...
They surely have cameras. I know they have cameras. I've been in there enough. So, yeah, just like you said, law enforcement would have to request footage, and that's just not going to happen. So
If they're all in cahoots with each other.
that's right.
Well, you know, if they request footage, all of a sudden the cameras would have blacked out and there's no footage at all, because that's how they rule.
Oh yeah, they would say there's no, cameras weren't working for the moments we're asking for stuff.
Well, and wasn't there like a robbery next door at Telly's?
There was
And, like,
many years ago, and
Oh yeah, you know what happened? The cameras blacked out and there was no footage.
yeah.
That's odd.
That happens.
But it's really not odd at
it
all.
seems to happen a lot
Just-
these days.
if
Right?
you
The cameras black out.
If you think like a criminal, like these people, then it's not odd at all. Like, you just expect that would happen.
I thought that was a spider. I got
Not a
scared.
spider. You're okay.
What is that?
It's
You really
Wait.
don't mind editing, do you?
I'll leave that part in there.
Really?
Yeah, why not?
Take it out. That's crazy. That's crazy.
that's
I thought it was
crazy.
a spider. I really did. It's a fuzzy.
Of all things, that's crazy.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one says, has her ex-husband ever been considered a suspect because of the mold lawsuit, and did he end up with the money? I think it's probably about time that we touch on your guys' dad, and however you guys want to, if you each want to say something.
Our case ended up being settled, and my father gave us all the money.
So let's rewind for that too. Yes, he did give us the money, but
Let's start
on
there.
our mold
You
lawsuit,
didn't take any money.
the mold lawsuit, we were all listed as on the lawsuit. So it was going to be divided by 5, no matter what we won to begin with. So because it was settled, obviously she went missing the first day of our trial. So it ended up settling, and not, the trial obviously didn't finish. So, we got our portion, her portion. And then actually our dad gave us his portion too of what was left, of what we got. And honestly, it was nowhere near what we should have gotten, obviously because of what happened. So,
And I think you guys should tell people that you guys did settle because the first day of trial.
and that's been out there a few times. Obviously, I don't, that always takes a back seat to a lot of things because of how big this ended up.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
she went missing the first day of trial. So
which
that's
is why her phone was off.
why
Yeah.
her phone was off.
Because
we
people
were
have
in
asked
court.
that. Yeah.
But yeah, he was a suspect. The insurance company that we had the lawsuit against was a suspect. He was a suspect. Everybody was looked into. We had PIs that were following him. I was following him. Everybody that was a suspect we followed personally, and PIs followed them as well. Mm-hmm. So.
And he did go. The police did bring him in for questioning. He went willingly. He answered whatever it is that they needed. He did whatever it is that they needed him to do. It's funny how the police pull him.
He
when
was
they chose
actually
it.
the only one that cooperated.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
But then
John
again,
Matouk.
he's
We have
the
to give him
only
that.
one. John also cooperated.
Yes.
But those were the only 2 people that they investigated. The local police investigated. We investigated on our
Everybody
own
else.
with PIs every single person.
But when
We
they
had them looking into every single person, including our father.
Yeah.
We want you looking at John. We want you looking at Dave. We want you looking at Bill. We want you looking at Tim. We want you looking at the insurance company. I mean, they were looking at literally everybody in the very beginning because we were like, what in the actual
Fuck is going on here?
fuck is going on? Like, she said, she was scared and like, she said something about Tim, but like, we were thinking like, would he really have done this? Like, are you fucking kidding me?
And there
Like,
was
he
a
killed
point
her?
where you guys, like, it even crossed your guys' mind. Not anything against your dad, but you're thinking, okay, like, our mom's dead. We don't know who could have had anything to do with this.
We were looking at everybody sideways.
Exactly.
And it was
I
like
remember she was missing.
she was missing.
Yeah.
It
She
was
was
like
missing for like 70 days. So
Like-
this is all going on for 70 days. We're having people
Yeah.
followed around, looked at. The
And-
cops are doing, their half-ass job and, just twiddling their thumbs. And we're, calling every day to see what the hell's going on. And always the same story. Like, they're not doing shit. And so we knew, like, from the first minute when they knocked on the door and asked if my mom was missing and it was my car, that they were somehow involved with this, right? So right away we got a PI. It wasn't like we waited. It was like same day,
Yeah.
next day.
we had a PI immediately. Less than 12 hours later, we had an investigator on this. So Yeah.
You guys, and even though it being your dad, you didn't write him off because she's your dad.
She kept telling us, if something happens to me, look at Tim Matouk. So
she was creating the path for you guys.
The path for us to go forward on this. So to throw our dad in the ring to say that it would have been him or could have been him or it would, no.
This is you guys talking about this 14 years later. You have to remember at the time, and you have to remind everybody, like, Michael, what were you going to say?
At the time that we hired our first PI, my father helped us find the PI, hire the PI, and then while we were, pursuing things with that investigator, we were following him.
And
it's not a crime to marry somebody's best friend. Is it shitty? Of course.
He was to a degree for many. I mean, this is going on 14 years now.
Mm-hmm.
He was for, the first 7 years, had a hand in it, was, trying to help us guide us in the right direction. But yeah, after a certain amount of time, he just wanted us to get on with our lives, which is understandable.
A healing journey.
which is probably the appropriate advice for a father to give his kids in our situation.
Agreed. Okay, so the next one, it says they stated that she was followed by multiple cars and people. Did she keep any sort of record of what cars were following her? What did she mention in detail? What kind of detail did she give you guys in regards to that?
She didn't give us, she just told us that she was being followed. She didn't actually give us a detail of a vehicle, but she did say that she definitely is being followed. And I think that she didn't want to give us or talk about it too much because then she knew, she didn't want to scare us or make us feel like,
scared.
You could tell she was scared and overwhelmed. And
I do remember her saying at one point that when it was getting when they were following her a lot, that it was multiple vehicles and multiple people.
So it was hard to keep track of.
It was hard to keep track of.
At any point, did you guys think she was just being paranoid?
Yeah,
no.
For sure. I did. I mean, it's
at the beginning, maybe?
At the beginning, for sure.
Well,
You're like...
it wouldn't... But
I thought, you know what, maybe someone's following her, but I never thought they'd actually kill her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think I was ever, that worried.
I thought something was going on. I didn't think there was a reason to be concerned about it.
Michelle said, we didn't think they were actually going to, do anything.
You thought your mom was like, okay, Mom, you saw or heard something. Now you're being paranoid. We know that she called the security company. She had locks changed at the house. She was taking precautions, but it also makes me curious. As a mother, if she, like you guys said, if she didn't tell you guys things because she was in fear of putting your lives in jeopardy, and that was her way of keeping you guys safe, which it's like a toss-up because it's yes, it kept you guys safe, but now it's now you're going back trying to find evidence 14 years later, and you're trying to figure out, okay, do we have any...
Yeah, and then, she was telling people, her cousin, if I tell you, then they're going to come get you too. And it's we didn't even, understand, but, these were, the phrases coming back to us from the people she was talking to. So
after the fact.
it was she knew
that
people were after her for what she knew.
Yeah, she was planting the seed, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's crazy, too, because Kathy's affidavit... So Kathy is Joann's sister, and her affidavit actually is pretty telling because it says a lot about your mom's concern for her safety.
We'll have to put that.
We will, for sure.
The reason the time we realized it wasn't paranoia was there was a night where she was pouring her purse on the floor and she was going, the keys are missing. The keys are missing. The set of keys are missing. And we're thinking, what are you talking about? We're not following what she holds on to. And she's like, these keys are missing. I'm telling you. And then, months after she's missing, we find out she's passed and the police return those keys that were missing.
Before her body was found.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we realized at that moment, oh shit. This wasn't paranoia. This was happening.
It was it was like having all these little puzzle pieces and you're starting to put it together.
Yeah.
And then you guys didn't know she called a security company. You didn't know until after you were looking at her phone records.
And we still have an issue with saying the paranoia because it was all
it was all valid.
It's all valid. So that just stings because the cops are like, oh, she was fucking paranoid. She's crazy. No, but she's not.
And I think maybe that's a word that you guys should take back from them. Yes, she was in fear.
Yeah.
Just because you're in fear or paranoid of something doesn't
mean
it not true. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you're fucking crazy.
So it still bothers me to this day because they're like, oh, she was just fucking paranoid. No, bitches, she was being followed.
And the biggest thing that I think comes back to that paranoia word is when you look at her mental health records.
Yeah.
They literally state in there she was not like schizophrenic. She was not
nothing.
And I'm going to say she was not paranoid. She was telling them like, this is what's actually happening to me. I am scared for my life. I'm noticing things going on. I would say she was very like keen when it came to like her surroundings and her, like you said, like, you know, she started to notice little things. So she was making an adjustment, but not, like you said, planting seeds.
It's important to know that all of her physicians, all of her doctors said she had no mental illness. She had no history of mental illness. There was nothing wrong with her mentally. And the police went out and said, oh, she committed suicide. She was paranoid. But you know what's interesting about the police? They never contacted her physicians.
Yeah, never. Once did they reach out.
We contacted her physicians. RTI contacted her physicians and got those letters from those doctors. So how thorough was their investigation? If you're going to call somebody that's suicidal and paranoid, aren't you going to go to the doctor and make sure that you can cross your T's and dot your I's before you make a statement like that?
I'm going to be the first to say, I've seen a therapist. I take anxiety medication. That doesn't mean I'm suicidal.
Right.
That doesn't mean that I have suicidal ideations. That doesn't mean I've had anything. That just means, hey, I've recognized that there is a wiring issue in my brain with my mental health, and I got the direct help. Just because you see a psychiatrist or a therapist doesn't mean you're crazy. And I hate that fucking stigma so much. Like, I feel like our generation of people, we grow up in an environment where like all of our parents raised us like, oh, you don't talk about your feelings, you don't talk about these things. And it's like, no, you should take the resources that are available to you.
Right. And also people are, you know, some patients are suited for their medication, right?
Exactly.
Her doctor never thought that.
She didn't take anything.
She never took anything.
She didn't need anything.
But I just, even people who do take doesn't mean that they're suicidal. And that's the biggest that I think misconception when it comes to this entire case is that the police will say, oh, she was suicidal. Never once did. Don't you think with everything that was going on in her life, she would have mentioned to her psychiatrist if she had any sort of suicidal ideations?
Yep.
And actually, in one of the documentations from the doctors, your mom was actually like excited for her future. And like she was getting, out of the house with the mold and the health issues that were coming from that. She was gonna file for the divorce. You know, they were legally separated, but she was gonna move forward with that. She was excited for like the next steps of everything, which I think somebody who is suicidal is not thinking in that positive mindset
for anything further. Nope.
Exactly.
And she won't, so.
Yeah. But, okay, so the next question says, are there any pics of the water itself from the night of, and does it show whether it was iced over or ice was broken? We've posted this a few times. I'll make sure I post it again and tag everybody in it. So the water's edge that night, there was like little pieces of ice. It was not frozen over.
It wasn't even like sheets. It was small pieces.
Small pieces. So like if somebody was to go into the water, like you would have been able to see them. We're talking like a couple inches wide pieces of ice. The weather then was snowy. It was icy conditions for Michigan, but it wasn't thick ice. We're talking, kind of the start of
the whole lake hadn't even frozen over yet.
Exactly.
So it was the top layer.
Exactly.
That year, the lake was at the lowest point it had been in very many years.
And the weather, the weather was warmer that weekend. I remember looking back and seeing what the weather was. But I think what it comes to is like there wasn't, so when they went to the water's edge, there wasn't like, a big sheet of ice like you could walk across and then you saw a hole in it. No. I think that's the biggest
misconception.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think
you can see the water almost moving right at the water's edge. It's flowing right there. So we'll post those pictures again.
There was probably 1 to 2 inches of ice that was super thin at the very, very edge.
Which was just being pushed against that break wall.
It was like nothing,
Right.
So
we'll post those pictures again.
Yes, we'll make sure.
so everyone can see those again.
But if you stepped on it, it would have cracked.
Right.
Well, and like people have said, we've talked about your mom's physique walking down a slope in high heels at nighttime.
Yeah.
In the snow.
That
she would never even made it to the water.
And there was nobody talks about how there was a huge gaping hole with metal rebar at the supposed entry area. So she would have
with no snags on her clothes.
She would have slid, fell into that hole, and just would have been there.
She would have been hanging on a wire.
She couldn't have made it out of that hole.
No.
And
so it's like,
there's no way.
What are they talking about?
And also the first group of divers that were on the case that night, I'll never forget, they were saying her body didn't go into hypothermia and she was Michael Phelps, then she's not in this water. You'd have to be an Olympian to get out of the area we're searching in.
And that was the officials talking directly to you guys.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That I think is a huge, and which we'll go back just for a second. The divers, I've spoke to the diver that searched for her multiple times. He had said, Liv, if she was in that water, she would have been right there. But aside from it, the individuals that we have talked to, Bill Robinette, Sal Rastrelli, all of these people have history of rescuing individuals from water. And they said that the likeliness of actually committing suicide in water is like so small. Mm-hmm. And there's a specific way that these individuals are found with like this diagonal breathing, and the likeliness of her ever actually stepping foot into the water right there, they said was probably like slim to none.
So that's what, it's interesting and people need to know. Every single person we hired had 25 plus years of law enforcement experience in crime scene investigations. They were experts in water recovery. They were experts. Like all these people that we hired had their expertise in these types of crimes and water recovery. So it's, to me, what they had to say about this, coming from a totally different area, knowing nothing about the case. A lot of these experts came from out of state. And for them to say, something smells to high hell here, this is a complete cover-up, and she didn't go into this water, this location, she was dumped probably within a mile or two of where she was found. That says a lot. Mm-hmm. They have nothing to gain. They have nothing to lose, you know what I mean, from just giving their expert opinion. That's that. So, I think people need to recognize, who these people were coming in and taking a look at the case and what their expertise were.
Agreed. 100%. Yeah. Okay, so the next one says, did police ever explain to you guys why they thought that it was Joann that was missing, even though the car was not registered to her with the car that they found? Did they ever give you any explanation?
No.
No, there was no explanation.
There was none.
They literally were like, oh, we didn't say that. We said we found the car. We didn't ask if her mother was missing, but they clearly asked if my mother was missing because
we'll never ever forget that moment in our life.
And Kelly was like, did they just ask if mom is missing?
Well, and I was just looking back at your deposition, Michelle, actually, where the lawyer was asking you, and you were saying, you said, like, any pivotal moment in your life, she was telling him, like, I could never forget that moment. Mm-mm. She goes, and I remember looking over at the DVR to see the time.
Yeah.
Because I was so like, what? Like, it's so, she wouldn't have been back by now. Like, how is this even happening? Mm-hmm. Like, what is going on? And the attorney that was representing the police department at the time had said to her, well, how do you know the DVR time wasn't wrong? And she's like, it's a DVR. Like, I don't set that. That comes directly from Comcast or whoever our, provider was at the time.
Anything traumatic in your life that happened, you remember the time, in date and instant in which it occurred, and everything that happened at that moment.
That moment.
An example.
But not only that, your guys' phone records, frantic calling,
but that moment in time, literally, you can drop us back into that moment, and we can tell you verbatim what came out of those guys' mouth at that moment.
It's burned in our memory. I can see the clock. I can still see the clock.
That's never going away. So for you to tell us that you're going to tell me that you didn't tell us our mom was missing or you asked for our mom? Bullshit.
And then the phone records match our testimony and what we recall. So I'm like, okay, they came to the house at 9:24. We started frantically calling right after that, and the phone records show that. They're like, no, we didn't come to the house at 9:24 because they couldn't have legally because they didn't run the license plate until 9:53 to have gotten to our house, right? Yep. So they had to say that they didn't run the plate until
it's all their timeline.
Whatever. They didn't come to the house until after they ran the plate. So they're like, oh, we came to the house at 10:24, not 9:24. And I'm like, no.
No, because, and that's another thing.
Exactly. And you guys are having to say it's 10:24 because you're corrupt and we caught you.
Well, and their
you
documentation.
Knew she was going to disappear.
Exactly.
And you were coming to cover for whatever the hell was going on in you disposing of her body.
So from the very first second, this was a problem.
And it's an issue. You guys have never, ever, ever been able to identify who that was that came to your door. Because they told you guys it was a specific officer. And the three of you said that is not the gentleman that came to our door.
That is definitely not. To this day, we've never seen that guy again.
That was not him.
That was not any of these. Anybody that they brought in and telling us that was him, it was not him.
And your guys' timeline, not only phone records, but the U.S. Coast Guard, your guys' timeline aligns with their timeline when it comes to, and which this is another damning thing, the United States Coast Guard timeline is automatic. It cannot be changed. It can't be rendered. It can't be anything. It's what it is in the system.
All of their reports are generated from the aircraft automatically when they're above wherever
once
they are.
Once the aircraft turns on, it stamps when it turned on. And then when it lets off, it stamps again. So it's very, very specific, and you cannot alter a U.S. Coast Guard plate.
And they were called at the same time that they showed up at our house, and they were on site before they even had run the license plate on the car.
Yeah, the helicopters were there at the church when we got there, which makes no sense. There was helicopters in the water, over the water.
And I want to go back to this for a second. Any other fucking missing persons case, listen, I have listened to every fucking true crime, homicide, missing, any other department, you cannot even get them to take a fucking report before 48 hours on a missing person.
Okay, number one,
especially
in
an adult.
To us, right?
Yes.
She wasn't missing. Nobody reported her missing. They came to us and told us she was missing, which is never happened in the history of law enforcement. Secondly, they don't act on it for 24 to 48 hours ever. So what was all this?
Yeah, had we reported her missing, they would have told us to come back in 48 hours.
She's an adult. She could go missing if she wants to go missing.
Right.
Maybe she wanted a vacation from you three. I can already hear it. Yep. Literally. I can already hear it.
They actually told us maybe we needed to go and have coffee with one of her friends somewhere else. Maybe she has a boyfriend out of state. That's what they told us. we said, okay.
I can't.
That would have been great if she ran away with some guy.
But
which is
that there was over $250,000 of resources sent out to a lake that nobody had seen a person go into. The only reason you would send these type of resources out if somebody's like, I just saw somebody go into the water.
Fall into the water.
Right.
And I'm trying to help them and they can't get out.
No person that saw anything like that or called anything like that. So why would you
it's so damning, the amount of evidence of other people talking about that night and that day. They saw a woman at the water's edge, but they also saw two vehicles. We had eyewitnesses. There was an individual that worked in the administrative building, had witnessed a car pulled in suspiciously, kind of hidden behind some bushes, and that car never was saw again. And then another individual came forward and said that he saw a van pulling and speeding off around. So these are three different people who don't know each other. Now one of the eyewitnesses is dead, Paul Hawk. He was the one that actually identified Tim Matouk at the water's edge that night. Sketch was drawn up. Everything was done correctly. It's just, there's so many instances.
Let's remember, he drew that sketch with a independent sketch artist that was retired from MSP because the police were not helping him. They were shooing him away. They didn't want to hear what he had to say. And so after we realized he existed, which was a year later, we got a retired MSP sketch artist to sit down with him, and he sketched who he saw that night. And he didn't know who the suspects were in the case at this point. He had no idea. So he just so happened to sketch an identical match of Tim Matouk
Who he doesn't
without
know.
knowing who Tim Matouk was or that Tim Matouk was a suspect, right?
And he can't deny that butt chin. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, you can't deny the butt chin.
Not many people have that chin, let's be honest.
It's bizarre. It's very close. The sketch is very, very close.
Yeah. And that's not the only sketch that Tim Matouk matches, but we will get there.
We'll get there.
We will get there. Another
Coming up on.
season 500. No, I'm just kidding.
Seriously.
So there's so many instances when it comes to like the vehicle being in, and this is another thing. So when I was reading the deposition, the first officer that ran the lien on the vehicle actually notated that the tabs were expired just by a few days. And what he had said was, I wasn't worried about it. It's a few days. He goes, it's gross. Like, he goes, I knew it wasn't probably like a criminal vehicle. It was probably somebody that just forgot. They had nothing that came up on the lien machine.
Right,
He deemed it no action.
Yeah.
So if he was so concerned.
He deemed it no action, kept going, did not discuss it with anybody else in the department.
Correct.
Just continued to patrol. And then all of a sudden, here comes Columbo, and of course his name's Columbo. Mm-hmm. And he pulls up, and then all of a sudden he determines that car belonged to somebody that wasn't me, and it had to be Joann.
Now, did they ever go?
Gone into the lake.
Did they ever go check and see if with Kathy? Because Kathy's name was also on that vehicle.
No.
No, they didn't.
That's even more bizarre to me.
It wasn't Kathy or Michelle that was missing. It was Joann. It was never anyone that was, anyone on the car. Nope.
Okay. And then let's talk about, because it's on here, but it's further down, but I want to chat about it now because we're kind of already on this. Somebody asked about Tim Matouk's alibi for the night, Bill Matouk's alibi for the night. Where are we at with that?
Nobody knows.
On the night.
He was never investigated.
Tim was still never seen that night. There's no eyewitness that saw him that night.
William Hanger was his boss for the Comet and with the state police patrol. And
I thought you were talking about Bill Matouk, because I don't know where Bill Matouk was in the time that she disappeared.
I don't know
We
either.
have no idea.
Yeah, we have no idea
Nobody
where he was.
ever investigated him. Nobody ever asked where he was at that time.
Nope.
So we still don't know where Bill Matouk was at all. He has no alibi.
And then Tim
period.
Matouk supposedly was working on a task force in Warren. Now, this is another thing that I thought was unique when I was listening to his deposition and reading it. So when they start the day of whatever task force they're going on to, they have to basically create like a log for the day. And his log was like not detailed at all. And the lawyer was asking him, like, why isn't this detailed enough? Like, there's no timestamps, there's no anything that's going on. He's like, oh, well, it depends on what was going on that day. And like, he can't remember where he was. He doesn't know if he had to go to, like their meeting spot first, or then he went there.
You have to also remember that we deposed every single person that was on his task force that night. Nobody could attest to seeing him. Okay?
Nobody.
So nobody saw him that night.
So his alibi
And
is
the
I was on
the
duty.
radios that they communicate on
That'd be great if
it
cops
covered
didn't
the
commit
state
crimes.
of Michigan.
So this is very important to what you just said. The radios that they use, they go through you can hear them through half the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
So he could have been from here to past Lansing.
There's no saying that somebody else was in that vehicle anyways.
Right. So he's like, I was on radio. They heard me over the radio. You literally could have been anywhere halfway through the state with your radio.
Well, and the other thing, too, is he had a vehicle from the task force.
Yes.
And they did ask him about the mileage. Like, was there a way you tracked it? There was no tracking anything.
None.
Nothing.
Nothing.
So, like, his alibi is non-existent. So for him to use that as an alibi, it's not an alibi.
Right.
An alibi is literally you being in a place and it being specified that you're there. There's documentation, there's proof. Somebody seeing you.
Anything.
Which is why the federal judge, when she determined the case, she allowed us to go back after him at any point in time. So usually when you file a lawsuit and it's over and done with, you can't sue again for that same circumstance. But in this circumstance, the judge saw the sketch side by side and was like, She saw that there was no alibi and therefore has kept it open, dismissed without prejudice, meaning that we could go back after him for the exact same lawsuit at another point in time.
Yeah.
Meaning that he killed her and had people covered up for him.
Yeah, that's just, that's crazy.
So what does that tell you?
That she knew that there was something fucking odd going on, but she didn't have enough evidence.
And she actually writes that in her opinion.
Yeah. She does.
Like, the facts uncovered are very disturbing and unresolved.
Yeah.
This lawsuit is meritorious. Meritorious means it has merit to it.
Well, and you know
it was
what?
a lawsuit of a cover-up of a murder.
I
And
think
a conspiracy to conceal
exactly
the identity of the murderer. That was the lawsuit.
And I think,
and that's what she said. This lawsuit has merit to it. It's disturbing and unresolved.
Grosse Pointe Woods and Grosse Pointe Farms, though, there should have been other legal action taken towards them for not completing a correct crime scene analysis.
So
They're
unfortunately,
saying they have all these hours
have so
of
much protection with laws.
So, yeah, we
come
found
to
out.
find out that they can pretty much get away with anything
They are overly protected in the law.
because of how they're protected with the law.
And so the judge did everything she could to help us, but because of the way the laws are written to protect the police, that's why she laid it.
I just don't get it. If you don't do your job correctly.
I will tell you, and I did mention this before, we did not come out like we won the lawsuit, right? Like, we didn't win anything. But what we did, or what the judge did, is said, there's merit to what you're saying. This is super disturbing. You know, the laws are protecting these cops, unfortunately. But I do agree that what the lawsuit you brought forth does have merit to it. So they have to pay their own attorney fees. Typically, when you lose a case that you're the plaintiff and you're going after a defendant and you lose, you have to pay your attorney fees and the defense fees. In this case, they had to pay their own fees, which was over $500,000, by the way. So the taxpayers paid for them to cover up a murder.
That's fucking crazy. So all of you should be really fucking pissed off.
Well, they paid their salaries to cover up the murder, and then they paid for them to be represented in court for covering up the murder.
So gross. Well, I guess this goes perfect into the next one, because then it says, what is Grosse Pointe Police doing today? What are they doing for this case? What are they doing?
They're covering up a murder.
Still.
That's what they're doing.
They're actually covering up a hit and run.
Oh, and they're covering up a hit and run.
That was, so the next question says...
You said today. That's what they're doing today.
Yeah, today. So the next question says, does the billboard go out daily, or where are we at with the billboard? Is it decommissioned after this incident? Where is Grosse Pointe Woods Police?
No, I think everyone should get ready for more billboards. Definitely.
I think after this incident, there should be 10 billboards going.
And it should have the photo of him hitting the billboard on the billboard.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be a good idea.
So, I mean...
You know what? I think that's a good idea. Just blow up him hitting the billboard on the next billboard.
So, I think episode 11 does a great job. And obviously these questions, some of them are for before episode 11 came out. But I think it's good for people to go listen to episode 11, because it gives you an insight onto when we're I'm not a law enforcement officer. I don't know the law. I've said that 100 times. I'm just a fucking podcaster.
Right.
I don't know the law. But what I would tell you is I'm not fucking stupid, and I was not born yesterday.
Right.
I'm very respectful. I was raised where you honor the law, and you're kind, and you pay your taxes, and these people honor you. And my whole opinion on law enforcement has changed. I've gone down rabbit holes of how I feel about law enforcement. But what it comes down to is the people that we're asking questions to will then take us to the next person to answer the question. And then when I ask that person the question, then they transfer me to somebody else. So it's like we really can't get an answer right now from Grosse Pointe. I don't know what's going on. As of right now, the individual, the suspect, who was identified for hitting the billboard is currently living it up in Cabo, Mexico. So there's been no warrant issued as of today. What is today?
He was not arrested the same day as he should have been.
And
if they didn't arrest him the same night, they should have arrested him the next morning. And if they didn't arrest him the next morning, they should have arrested him the next day after that. They went effectively 7 full days before he left the country.
Which I think was no coincidence,
to
you
go
guys.
7 days and then leave the country and still didn't arrest him with all of the evidence that it was him.
Yeah, it was clear as the evidence.
And to be honest with you, we're not even shocked. This is just how
this is expected.
they roll in this
But this is
area.
perfect.
This is what they do.
This whole
They don't do
scenario
anything.
is perfect.
Yeah,
it's a perfect storm that was created.
Like, I think we would have probably been more surprised if they did arrest him.
Agreed.
Oh, I would have been 100% shocked.
I actually remember sitting in the back seat.
I was on point, ready for this to happen, exactly how it happened, and this is exactly what happened. And then when you try to hold them to an answer, and they point the finger at the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor's like, well, it's not our job to arrest him. It was the Grosse Pointe Woods Department's job to arrest him. And then you call them, they're like, oh, well, it's not really exactly like that. Really? Because you were supposed to arrest him.
Well, and I remember we were sitting in the back seat after it happened, and I turned to Michael and I go, this is a fucking perfect thing that could have happened. This is perfect. They'll arrest him. Michael looks at me and goes, they're not going to arrest him. I'm like, wait, what? And he starts looking at me. He's like, they're not going to arrest him. And I was like,
Michael's like, oh, you must be new.
Yeah.
Are you new?
And I was like, wait, like, it's a fucking hit and run. And not only is it a hit and run, we got it on fucking camera. It's the fucking murderer's son.
In broad daylight.
In broad daylight.
Mack Avenue.
Don't even know the person that got it on camera either.
Liv, you're new to the corruption. Welcome.
Yeah. Michael looks, he's
Now
like, they're not
you're seeing it
arresting
unfold
him.
right in front of your eyes.
I'm like, what do you mean they're not going to arrest him? They have to arrest him. He's like, come on.
They made sure that he had time to renew his passport and get the fuck out of here.
True. 100%. Agreed. I think that there was a reason.
Yeah.
And I learned, talking to other people that have worked in the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, that the way that they handled things when it comes to, like, what do they call it? In something arrest?
In custody arrest, out of custody arrest. Yep.
They were explaining to me the difference between the two and how, even though they didn't arrest him that night, they, like Michelle said, they could have arrested him after the fact. Mm-hmm. But even if they did arrest him that night, they could have had up from 48 to 72 hours to charge him. So even if they did arrest him, he was still innocent until they would have charged him.
Right.
So there were scenarios where he still was getting away with things. And not only that, I called and told them that I saw him behind me.
But we need to reiterate, you called and said that he's driving behind me the night that they said they were looking for him. And they said, oh yeah, we talked to him. You talked to him. He just hit somebody going 50 miles an hour 3 times. The wheel fell off the truck. He went back behind the liquor store, got out and went into Telly's and was drinking.
If the 4 of us did
normal?
that...
Is that normal? And then he went and got some Taco Bell. Is this a normal situation? And at the end of the day, like, they could have arrested him that night because they had the evidence. They're trying to say they didn't. We know that they did because they spoke to the witness. She told them who it was. They got the photos that night.
We have screenshots of everything. We have the email that was sent.
We have screenshots.
Right.
They're saying, oh, we didn't have all this.
Until they're blue in the face, we didn't have everything we needed. You did. You had enough. Yeah. You knew who the suspect was. You knew who did it. You saw the damages to the vehicles, both vehicles. And you had a witness that called and said it was Bill Matouk Jr. that was driving the vehicle. So what else would you need to arrest somebody? I'm sorry.
Not only that, but
am I confused?
I would understand an out of custody pursuit if we had one piece of evidence. Maybe there was one witness, but there wasn't damage to the vehicle. But we had damage to the vehicles, we had a witness, and we had a victim. And they're like, you know what? We'll let him go.
Yeah, and multiple pictures.
And I think all of us that night were very confused because I remember sitting there and him being like, yes, we're looking for him. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, amazing. Like, they're going to do what they're going to do.
And he comes back a half hour later and he's like, no. Or it was like it's like he went to the station and came back and his story changed.
It was so weird.
It was bizarre. But I mean,
and it took an hour for Grosse Pointe Woods to get there. St. Clair Shores did a phenomenal job.
He did. The officer actually that showed up was very helpful from Grosse Pointe Woods that night. He was helpful.
But you have to realize they have to listen to the superiors.
And the superiors are the people that helped cover up the murder.
They're directing them in the direction they need them.
At the end of the day, if one of the four of us did that, we would be sitting in jail right now.
Should we try it?
Try
that theory. Should one of us go hit something right now and see if we get arrested?
Well, then you're going to have to pause the podcast.
Hold on, we'll be right back.
Just kidding. Okay, so the next one says, why is a murderer and a pedophile rapist still working at the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office?
That is a great question.
I don't know. I asked Maria Miller. I said, are you aware of the accusation? She goes, well, we don't base things off of accusations.
But what if the accusations are not, what if they're real? We have proof that's real.
There's a victim. So it's not just an accusation. There's a victim.
The victim came forward.
Multiple victims that came forward.
So
saying that he's a sexual abuser, saying that he was spotted at a scene of a murder, and they're still like, he's fine. Just let him.
So if you guys can figure that question out for us, because we can't find the answers, please let us know what you find.
Keep writing to them.
Yeah.
Keep writing to them.
Write them, call them, ask them that question over and over again, because they won't answer us.
And actually, the person that came forward to talk about their trauma and the sexual assault, I feel for them because they did come to state police and nothing was ever done.
Nothing happened.
And as a victim, I think that, and I hate using the word victim because I feel like it's like this, I don't like that word.
Tarnished.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like survivor. So maybe we call it a survivor. That person was a survivor of something horrible that was happening to them that these
people were hurt so bad they can't attach their name to their suffering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. And I feel for that person because now at this point, I've communicated with them and they've said there's no fucking point in me coming forward. I've already done it.
Nothing's happened.
It's in depositions. It's sealed. Mm-hmm. There's nothing I can do.
There's no more that this person can do. And so, we want to know why.
And not only that, but the ex-wife of Tim Matouk. She talks about the trauma and the hurt and the physical abuse and verbal abuse that he caused her. So this is not just one person that's saying this. There's a scenario of people that have come forward, and every single time they come forward, they're fucking freaking out for their life. Every time.
And I mean, don't blame them either, because this is the type of person that we're dealing with.
Exactly.
That, that his ex-wife came forward for a deposition 15 years after they were divorced and was still shaking and scared of him.
Yeah, that's horrible. Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Just an animal on the loose.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the next, we're getting to the last couple here. So somebody asked, eventually, do we think that we'll release all the deposition videos? I mean, we've talked about it.
I mean, they're public record. Anyone can find them.
Yes, but it's hard to find them in their entirety, I will say.
We probably will as we're uncovering everything.
I think to see some of the officers squirm when they ask questions.
It's pretty fantastic.
I texted you girls not that long ago and I was like, every time this officer lies, he bites his lip. And it's obvious lying because you look at the deposition and then you look at the physical evidence and it's contradictory of each other.
They definitely all have their tell
Yeah.
In the depths.
So I hope at one point we'll probably release them all.
We can. It's going to have to be the appropriate time for those to come, but I think we will.
We're getting a website together right now, which I think is good.
Yeah.
So all of this will be accessible for everybody to click on and view and in real time. Yeah. Somebody said, who flies the planes? It's not us.
Our favorite character.
Joann Matouk. Joann Matouk will eventually come on the podcast. He is an individual that his name has been dragged through the mud a lot when it comes to Joann's story. And I think that there is a time and a place to talk about what has happened to John, but I don't think it's right now because I don't want it to deter from what we're currently talking about. But when we start to talk about Joann's family history and how the dynamic got to this point, John's story is going to be extremely relevant because
John plays a pivotal point in the whole family dynamic.
Exactly. So, and them using public office for personal gain is a huge thing.
Yep.
There were instances where they used their ability in law enforcement to have other people hurt Joann Matouk.
1,000%.
And I think that for him, he's very passionate about finding the truth about his sister. He's very passionate. I think his headstrong comes from the pain of 14 years.
Yeah.
I really do. And we will get to him. And a lot of people have asked, where's Joann Matouk? I talk to him all the time.
He does have a story to tell, but there's a time and place for him. So we'll
get there. Yeah. Somebody asked, why would Billy Jr. smash the truck if he didn't have anything to do with Joann's murder or disappearance?
I don't think Bill Jr. had anything to do with my mom's disappearance. Actually, I know he didn't have anything to do with my mom's disappearance. He's just, he's probably just protecting his family.
Yeah.
The way a young man is taught how to growing up.
And his dad's face was on that
billboard.
Right,
you hold down the fort. But I was just telling you, I look at Billy like I'm sure people look at their pets. You grow up with them, you love them, and then you find out they're biting people, and someone has to put them down. But you don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, Billy, he was a brother to me growing up. I love Billy. This is a lose-lose. I don't want to see him go down like this.
Which you said that first night.
Yeah.
You were like, how stupid. Why would he do this?
Yeah.
How stupid.
I figured he would do it. I just didn't want to have to see it.
The level of stupidity that went with it was even beyond what we even thought for him.
Okay, somebody said, you mentioned drugs. What's going on with that? Sex trafficking. Do we want to talk about our theory there? Do we want to talk about where we're at with that?
I think we should allow the evidence that you're going to be divulging in later, probably sooner than later, speak for that. I think that we kind of keep that.
Which we kind of left some breadcrumbs.
Yeah. I mean, all those things are happening, but we'll get there too.
There's definitely a lot of evidence that has come forth, and people and
let's just say
witnesses that have contacted, and we do know a lot of things that are going on, but we're not going to discuss it today, but we will discuss it in the near future.
And we'll just throw this out there as well. The things that we have uncovered and learned in this process, we never wanted to know. But we'll talk about it soon.
Oh my God, I just got a text from the tip line literally right now.
What does it say?
What does it say?
I just got a text from the tip line. It says, hello, I've been listening to the podcast, which is great, and these people need to be held accountable as you've looked under additional rocks and keep finding things. And you're alluding to there being even bigger things. It's gotten me thinking. I don't know if there's any connection, but there was an individual by the name John Wolf who had worked at the Woods Wine, and he died in December of 2008 by suicide. It has made myself and a few others pause recently and wonder if there is something else there. Again, I don't know anything, and I'm not saying this wasn't a suicide, but it is potentially worth looking into further, as there are nefarious things there. And possibly, what if he saw something? Maybe it wasn't a suicide. I don't know. Anyways, felt it was worth sharing. Keep up the good work. It's only a matter of time. Thank you.
Do you see the goosebumps?
How fucking... Oh my God.
Wow.
Both arms.
What's the time on it? 9:33.
Okay.
I've had my, yeah.
John was a good guy.
He was a great
He's
guy.
a really great guy.
We knew John, and we were also shocked when that suddenly happened. Yeah, that's a good question.
So maybe that's
I mean, we didn't know much then. I mean, we were so...
Yeah, because he passed before our mom did. So this was before we were digging into
2 years, yeah.
You know, so we didn't really know much.
We really didn't care, like, what was going on or, like, what kind of illegal activity was happening or what they were into because it wasn't affecting us.
Yeah.
But then once our mom gets killed, then now we're affected by it. So now I need to know everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's crazy. We were just talking, like, the last question was, we were talking about drugs. Like, that's weird.
And that's how that falls.
Yeah.
So, obviously, I mean, we could probably ask some questions if his family is willing to talk with us. I mean, I know it's probably very
on or
hard thing
off
to
the
talk
record.
about,
I mean,
but it's worth.
He had a wife.
Yeah.
What?
He was
You have kids?
I don't think he had any kids.
I think he was just newly married a couple
Oh
years.
my god.
Yeah. So, we'll reach out to the family and see if they're willing to chat with us. Because God only knows what that guy saw.
Right. Oh my god.
He was with them for a long time. He worked there from he was like a teenager when he started working there.
So talking about wine stores, somebody says here, you mentioned Joann walked out of the wine store more freaked out than when she walked in. They were asking you, Michelle. It says, what does Michelle have to say about that?
So she walked in unannounced, went upstairs. He either said something to her or she saw something or heard something she wasn't supposed to know or hear, which freaked her out even more than when she went there to tell him how Tim called her and threatened her.
And that's why she asked you to drive her there.
You're going in to tell him, Tim did this, Tim threatened me on the phone, you need to stay away from him, he's, an evil person. This is basically what she was going to tell him. And she came out more freaked out than when she went in. So that tells me that she was either told, threatened, saw something, heard something.
And she showed up unannounced.
I mean, those are the only reasons you'd be more fearful for your life than when you went up there.
And she had gone there twice. This was the second visit. And she went back because she said, she told us she was going the first time. And she told us after she went. And we said, why did you even bother? We know he's not going to, cooperate or he's just going to keep yelling or whatever. And she's like, I don't like the way that that was left. He couldn't look at me. He wouldn't answer my questions. I'm unsettled about the way I left that conversation. And then a couple more things happened, and then that's when she said to Michelle, drive me up there. Mm-hmm. And then again, unannounced.
And Michelle waited in the car.
And came back to this. She comes out, white as a ghost. She needed to go pray.
She uncovered something at that time.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was just weeks before.
Oh, yeah, it was...
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It was New Year's Eve.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Now that gives me chills.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. So...
with her always trying to do the right thing, and this is what happens to her. She was trying to make things right and trying to... God only knows what she uncovered, trying to not guide them. But
and you guys have said, too, you guys always kind of knew they maybe did some shady shit. You have all mentioned your mom, something had to have scared her more than drugs. Mm-hmm. Something had to have freaked her out.
For sure.
Drugs are not going to scare her to the point of what she came out looking like that day. That's not going to ruffle her feathers like that. It's not going to...
It's not like she knew they sold drugs, but she wouldn't be surprised.
Exactly.
Yeah, this was something bigger than we could even imagine that she saw or uncovered.
Yeah. So the last question I have on here says, what can we do to help with the case if we don't live in Michigan? And we've got a few of those. I know Michelle got a message from somebody on your guys' page. We got one on the No One Knows Instagram page, Facebook. What are we going to start? I mean, even people who do live in Michigan, but we'll start with what can they do if they don't live in Michigan? How can they help us?
The best thing at this point, phone calls
Make
and
phone
letters.
calls, write letters.
Yep. Reach out. There's websites. There's physically write a letter. Write an
and
email.
I think social media has come so far that they don't want any bad press,
Right.
especially Grosse Pointe Woods.
Yeah,
There has been overdoses in the city that have not even been put in fucking newspapers because they don't want
the bad publicity,
the
for it.
tarnish of the name.
Yeah.
So I think if you continue to share the podcast, share the information, share all the photos we share, spread it to everybody,
Get
make
everybody
phone
on board,
calls, write letters. It does, and you don't have to sign your name on it. Just make it anonymous if you want. And for those of you that live in Michigan, and if you're in the Grosse Pointe Woods area, farms, parks, Metro Detroit, I think you, especially if you're in Wayne County, you should be extremely upset. A lot of you have mentioned to me that you listen to this driving to work and driving home from work and on your lunch breaks, and just reminding you that your tax dollars have helped cover up Joann Matouk Romain's murder. And we have mentioned doing a rally, and I think we're going to release some information on that coming shortly.
Yeah.
We just want to get it back in the public eye, and just because it's a 14-year-old case doesn't mean, it doesn't deserve all of the attention that we're giving it. So
yeah, just put it out there, keep it out there. Use your voice.
Yeah.
Across the board.
Your voice for the voiceless.
Yeah. However that works for you guys.
And whatever everybody's comfortable with, too.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're comfortable. It's what you need to do. And
if you're comfortable writing a letter, if you're comfortable calling, if you're comfortable, posting on social media. If you're Joann Matouk and you like flying a plane.
Fly a plane.
If you're us and you like to hire a billboard company, there will be more billboards coming soon. Yeah.
But please help us with.
Yeah, if you're a pilot or you have an advertising company, give us a call. I'm sure we could use your help.
I think that's great.
That'd be great.
Anybody who wants to help, we will take the help.
Yes.
If you think there's something that we missed that we can get their attention, let us know.
Yes.
This podcast is not for entertainment. We need your help.
I think that says a lot. Okay, did the three of you, this is the first time we've sat down, the three of us, well, the three of you plus me.
You're part of the family now. Good luck to you.
Yeah, so if there's anything you guys want to say, anything else?
No, just, thank you for, everyone for listening in, and thank you, Liv, for, doing this podcast, and,
your mama sent me to you.
Nobody's ever done something like this. Even across the board, there's not a case that continuously is followed like this. So, I think it's really exposing the truth and opening people's eyes, and, we appreciate everyone that's listening and, trying to help.
Keep your questions coming. We'll do another episode.
Yeah, I like this. This is fun.
When we have more.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Thanks, guys.